You've been told your whole life to stay positive. Look on the bright side. Every cloud has a silver lining. Don't be a downer. And you've repeated it to yourself, to your kids, to friends in pain, pasted quotes on mirrors and smiled through tears because smiling is what Americans do. But here's the paradox that cracks that performance right down the middle. The harder you force optimism, the more anxious and depressed you actually become. Because toxic positivity isn't hope, it's denial wearing a party hat. And denial doesn't heal anything. It just shoves the pain into the basement where it grows teeth. The data is brutal. When people habitually suppress negative emotions, telling themselves don't be sad, be happy, they end up significantly more depressed and anxious than those who let themselves feel bad, because they've added a layer of shame on top of the original hurt. Now, they're not just sad, they're sad about being sad. Two problems instead of one. And the neuroscience is clear. Your brain's emotion system isn't a light switch. You can flip from sad to happy. Sadness is a signal that something needs attention, and ignoring that signal only makes it louder. Which is why people who stay positive after trauma often crash harder months later. The positivity was a dam, and dams break. The American twist is that we've turned optimism into a moral obligation. In other places you can say, I'm struggling, and it's human, but here struggle is failure, and admitting it is complaining. So we perform happiness, post smiling selfies from hospital beds, say, I'm fine, while drowning, and silence anyone who names the darkness, creating a culture where sadness is illegal and isolation is the penalty. Then we wonder why things are getting worse. Now here's the reversal that only fully settles in the second time you sit with it. The most resilient, truly happiest Americans aren't the ones who never feel bad. They're the ones who've learned to feel bad well, understanding that optimism isn't the absence of negativity, but the quiet trust that you can handle it when it comes. They let themselves cry, rage, say, this sucks, without immediately adding a but. Knowing emotions are waves you can't stop but can learn to surf, and the only way to surf is to acknowledge the wave, name it, and ride it out rather than pretending it's not there. Let me tell you about James, a classic American optimist with a mountain poster on his wall saying, attitude is everything, who when his father died said he's in a better place, when he lost his job said something better will come, when his wife left said everything happens for a reason, until one day his body refused to perform anymore, and he couldn't get out of bed, and a therapist told him something he'd never heard. You are allowed to be sad. In fact, you need to be sad, and you've been running from it so long it's become a monster. James didn't know how to be sad, so the therapist prescribed 15 minutes a day of deliberate, unashamed, wallowing, cry, scream into a pillow, write down what sucked, no positive spin, no gratitude list, no but, just the darkness. And the first week he felt like he was dying. The second week he cried for the first time since childhood. The third week, something shifted. The sadness didn't disappear, but it stopped being a monster. It became just a feeling, a visitor. And once he stopped fighting it, he found it left on its own after a while, and he'd spent years trying to outrun something that only needed to be sat with. The American cognitive paradox is right here. We worship optimism, but forced optimism is a lie, and lies don't heal. They postpone. And the only people who escape the optimism trap are the ones brave enough to be real. They don't lose hope. They lose the performance of hope, saying, this is hard, without apologizing, asking for help without calling it weakness, understanding that true optimism is not the denial of pain, but the earned confidence that pain is survivable, and you can't know that until you've survived some. Your brain right now might want to defend your positivity, insist that being negative makes everything worse, but ask yourself, does pretending to be positive feel worse because you're lying? Realism doesn't kill hope. False hope kills real hope because it collapses when reality hits, and real hope is built on the foundation of, this might fail and I'll be okay anyway. The only hope that lasts. The question from the beginning, why does forced optimism make everything worse, has an answer that a second viewing unpacks fully. Sadness is not the enemy, denial is, and we've been denying our sadness so long it's become a flood, and the only way out is to stop smiling and start feeling, not forever, just long enough to remember you're human. So if something unclenched, if the impulse sparked to send this to the person who always says good vibes only when someone is suffering, that's not about me. It's the recognition that those vibes are a cage, and the first honest breath might be the beginning of real hope. Now go feel one bad feeling without trying to fix it. That's an order.